All right, so we're going to now look at the future of players, and after that we're going to start to look at videos. So, how do we evaluate the future players? A common mistake is that you look at the #1 player in the world, the strongest player in the world, and whatever that person does is the best. All right? Wherever that person is doing forehand, that's the best, we're going to copy that. Whatever that person does in the backhand, that's the best backhand in the world. Whatever they eat for breakfast is going to be the best breakfast in the world. However they brush their teeth, we're going to brush their teeth the same way. And that's a common mistake. Everybody at all levels have strengths and weaknesses. And of course, if you're #1 in the world, there's many things that you do that is very, very good, but not necessarily everything. And you have a style and you make things work together. But other players are close to them, and they might have different strength that they can complement players at different levels. So the best way is to look at the different players that we have in the world, who does it the best of that skill, okay? And take that skill and put it into a potential future player. The simple solution is a future player will be able to play better than the current players. The trend is always, no matter how we do it, it will be better and better and better. We always find out to play better. And we will look at the videos, and it's very clear in those videos how table tennis have evolved over the years. But if you take up all the current players today, what each player does the best, that is likely that the player in the future can all do. For instance, you look at Malone, for instance. He's #1 in the world right now, won 3 consecutive men's singles world championship titles. He's now by many considered to be the best player of all times. And if you look at his forehand power shot, it's difficult to do it better. If you look at his serve return, his footwork, many things are very, very good. But you can also look at Xu Xin, lefty penholder. Okay, if you look at his long distance footwork, it's absolutely phenomenal. How he can move around everywhere. Probably better footwork long distance than what Malone has, because of the style that he has and what he's forced to do. And he on his level, if you look at Xu Xin, if you say that he has, let's use his backhand for everybody in the future to be the best in the world, you are moving in the wrong direction. He doesn't have the best backhand in the world. He has a decent backhand, way better than mine, but it's not as good as many other players at his level. You can also look at a player like Ovrachov. Ovrachov has a tremendous backhand power shot, way better much better than the Chinese. The Chinese have power shots, but not as good as a player like Ovrachov. Or look at the Japanese, the defense that they're doing. They have very good defense, better than the Chinese, better defense on forehand especially. So those are the trends of what we can look at the players and put all those qualities together, and also maybe that's how we make the future player. And also we focus now on tactical. You can also look at the physicalities of the table tennis players today compared to how it was 10 or 20 years ago. All the players are getting stronger, bigger muscles, better trained. Their physical level is much better now than it was before. And you can also look at the mental training. Many people are doing a lot of mental training that they didn't do before. There's quite uncommon, I would say, that players at a high level of all sports today, they meditate. Meditation is a quite common practice to be able to focus better. And then the new frontier, in my opinion, is the spiritual side. Sports spirituality, that's probably the new frontier in table tennis. If you think that maybe the soul is unlimited, then the soul knows everything. That would be nice to know a little bit of that. So how can I tap into those resources? That's what we call now sports spirituality. All right. All right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to now move over to the videos. So we're going to now look at the trends of table tennis over the years. And we have, like I said before, Jimmy Butler has helped me to put these videos together. And we're going to now go over to the video.
take it out of presentation mode.
Yes. So what we're going to start to work on here right now, we're going to start with, so I'm going to make comments after each presentation here. So we're going to start from 1971. So this match here is between Stellan Bengtsson. It's the final of the World Championship 1971. As you know, the TV quality wasn't as good in those days as it is now, so the footage is not so good quality, but he plays against Ito from Japan. So he plays the classical penhold with inverted on one side, only one side. And Stellan Bengtsson is 18 years old here, and he won the World Championships. I think there's no reason to try to, I think most people know that, so I don't want to take away the highlights, but he has some interesting thing that he did and how table tennis looked then. So let's look at some points here from the 1971 final of the World Championships. That serve there, we call that the reverse pendulum serve. So people who grew up in the 70s and 80s, we did that serve. You don't see that so often. And another thing that was important in those days was smash. There's a lot of smashes here. So Ito is the main attacking stroke in those days was smash, not loop. They did loop, but not so much. Okay, stop. Stop. All right. So the thing that we learned from 1971, there was very few things that were flips. Short game, short return was not so common. People had very weak backhands compared to today. There was blocking, and very few people could loop backhand. Smash was the feature stroke. A lot of good smashes, but not so good loops. They did loop, but it was more safe loops. And so that was the trend of 1971. We're now going to jump 11 years into the future. This is the final of the European Championships 1982, and that's between two Swedish players, Jan-Ove Waldner and Michael Appelgren. We're going to look at a couple of points from there. Oh, what a point, they say in Swedish. So Jan-Ove Waldner was ahead 2-0 in this match. He's only 16 years old here, and Appelgren is 21. Continue a little more. We need to see the celebration also. Okay, stop. All right, so you saw a big difference in the game there. In the early 80s, it started to be much more common with loop rallies, backhand loop, forehand loop, not so powerful, but a lot of loop play away from a table. So Michael Appelgren started the defensive game away from a table, especially on the backhand side, where he did, some people call it fish, some people call it block away from a table, but just like basically playing away from a table. And there was not so smash dominant anymore. Now it's more loop. And people develop better backhands, and they can also play a better game away from a table. There was also the time when anti, same side, was going on. We don't see an example of that here. But later on, the color rule changed to black and red. That was done in 1984. And then that change took away kind of all the anti-players, me included, from the scene. Okay, so the next time we're going to take a jump now we're taking a jump to 1987, and that's the World Championships. And now we're going to look at the trends of pips out. So China had a lot of pips out players in the 80s. There was Zhang Jialiang, who we're going to see here, world champion 1985 and 87. We're going to look at the final in 1987 here between him and Jan-Ove Waldner. And then we had Chen Long-kan, another pips out pen holder, and it was also with pips. And then Teng Yi, that was the shakehand player with pips on forehand. So those were the three strongest players in the mid to late 80s in China. So let's look at some matches from 1987. Teng Yi, right? Okay, stop. So I want to talk a little bit about what happened before the final. So before the final, Jan-Ove Wallner played Chen Long-kan in the quarters and Teng Yi in the semis. And he had now a total new type of backhand, which was a backhand smash. And he really surprised the Chinese, especially Teng Yi, when he had a lot of strong backhand smashes that led up to the final. And what Zhang Jieliang is doing here, he's taking away the backhand smash from Wallner by doing chop blocks with his short pips and pen hold. He does this stroke and slows the ball down, make it low, and that's a very difficult ball to smash. The right weapon against that ball will be a loop, but Wallner had not developed a loop yet in those times. Continue a little more. And the commentator is Chinese. I know most of you guys know Chinese, so it's no problem. So there he goes with his slow ball to backhand again. So Wallner was stronger on backhand than forehand. He liked when people gave pace to his backhand. He can return that. So there Zhang Jieliang was able to beat him with some smart trickery, slow ball to backhand. And so there he had backhand smashes, but not so strong backhand loop in 1987. So that's when Zhang Jieliang won the second World Championships in 1987. Now I'm going to continue to, the umpires try to make him stop cry. I don't know why he does that, but.
Continue.
Yes. Okay, actually, oh, we did the wrong order. Okay, so this is actually the semifinal. That's the semifinal that I talked about. This is Jan-Ove Wallner, same year. And he plays now against Teng Yi. And now you can see the backhand smash that I was talking about. This backhand smash was really strong in that match. That backhand smash down the line is something to take home. And you can see the score, 21-9 in the fourth game. So the next one here, okay, stop. Okay, so now we're going to move over to 1989. So 1989 was a very historic event in table tennis. That's when Sweden was able to beat China. And China had 3 pips out players. And Sweden figured out how to play pips out. And after Sweden was able to beat China 5-0 in those days, all of Chinese table tennis changed after that. No more pips out, no more pen hold, only shake hand, and there was a revolution in the whole sport in China, and it took 6 years before they were really maybe the best in the world again in 1995. And they had developed new players, they had developed the reverse pen hold, but there was traditional pen hold, the reverse pen hold they still have, they started with the reverse pen hold. So we're going to now look at how Sweden was able to surprisingly dominate China in 1989 in the team event. So the first match here is Michael Appelgren. So that was the last point in the final. Okay, this is the first match, and that was Michael Appelgren against Zhang Jieliang, the men's singles champion from 2 years before. So what Appelgren is doing here now, the same strategy of blocking with the backhand did not work against Appelgren because he was doing high spinny balls to Zhang Jieliang's backhand and pinning him there, and he had a really hard time with the pen hold and the pips to block high spinny balls, and Appelgren is really good at that. And then he waits for the right time and he goes in with his power forehand. So that was the strategy in those days, to play high spinny to the pen holder's backhand. They had a really hard time blocking that. So Michael Appleton won the first match, and that was a key match in a team match to win. So that was 1-0, and then matches after matches came in here. All right, stop. Okay, so basically in '89, the high spinning balls, both backhand and forehand, was basically taking away the advantages of the pip-side game. And then they just waited for the right time and speed up the game with a fast look to the forehand or something like that. And the Chinese can only do block, and then you have to step around. But it was too tough to step around and at the right time. And that's the reason why the Chinese were actually able to beat them. And all had very similar styles. 2 right-handed pip-side penhold, 1 right-handed shake hand, pip-side on forehand. Were kind of 3 styles, are very similar. So once you figure that one out, then you can take advantage of that style. And the China definitely learned from that and developed different styles, choppers and left-handers, pip-side backhand, and right-handers, and many different styles afterwards. So they definitely learned. So what we do right now, we're going into the 1992 Olympic final. So in these times, Europe was actually dominating table tennis. And in the Olympic final in '92, it was Michael Appelgrens against Jean-Philippe Gatien. So Jean-Philippe Gatien from France, he developed many new things. I would say he's the person who really was able to execute at the highest level the loop of the bounce games. He has very good loop of the bounce game, especially on the forehand side. He was also the first one to develop really high quality long serves. In the old days, pretty much every serve was short. And nobody thought about long serves. But Gatien developed the fast backspin serve. And Jimmy Butler copied him, or maybe Gatien copied Jimmy Butler. I don't know which one was what. But that's when the good quality long serves came into the game. And then we were able to see a different diversity of the sport. So we'll look at some points here from the Olympic final in 1992. So stepping around there, loop of the bounce beforehand. You see that that was the fast serve, and then he steps around directly afterwards. I can't miss that point. The fast block there. And Wallner won, and in interviews afterwards he says that was the biggest win of his life. So you can see he's not a person that shows emotion much, but there was a lot of emotions going on here. Okay, stop. The next thing we're going to go to is 1997. So now we're looking at the World Championship final in 1997. Again, 2 Europeans in the final. So it was Jan-Ove Wallner against Vladimir Samsonov. So Wallner did a very, very rare defeat in that tournament. He won the World Championships without losing a single game in the singles tournament. But I was there. I was coaching the U.S. team at the time, and I know that in the team event he did not play very well. He lost to Samsonov, for instance, in the team event, like very easy. It was very low scores. And now when he played him in the final, he beat him 3-0, and he really dominated the final. And he won every single match without losing a game, which is unheard of. So we're going to look at a couple of events. And the other thing is interesting also that Wallner changed his backhand again. So you remember in 1987 he had a smash backhand. Now he has a different backhand. He has a punch backhand, so to speak, a very active block. When somebody attacks to his backhand, he can press the ball down the line very, very fast and was very aggressive. And he does many other things good as well. But let's look at some points here. That ball down the line there, was a classic in that tournament. He did it a lot. And many times it was the in Wallner's career, his backhand changed a lot over time, but his forehand looked very similar. And it was always depending on how good can he play backhand that determines if he can be successful or dominant or not. If his backhand didn't work, somebody can beat him, like Jimmy Butler. Is he here? Yeah, there he is. Why did I talk so much about him? Stop. Okay, stop. All right, the next thing is 2004 Olympic Games. So now we had a very, very rare setup of 2 players. So this was probably the last time that a person could dominate and win in a major event that played the classic penhold, the Korean with playing on one side. And they had, his footwork was absolutely phenomenal. I don't think we even see the players today can move as fast as he could. And he had a good backhand in terms of backhand block and a punch block, but he didn't have a backhand attack or a backhand loop. But he had phenomenal footwork, was able to step around on many, many shots that many players couldn't do. And he plays against Wang Hao. And Wang Hao was probably the first player that I would say that was equally good backhand and forehand with the reverse penhold style. Inverted both sides, really strong backhand. And it was a battle between the new penhold and the old penhold. And it happens to be that the old penhold actually won. So let's look at some points here. Here's an example of Wang Hao's strong backhand power loop. And the Korean's forehand loop there is, of course, his forehand power is enormous. I just want to show that point because he saw how far ahead he goes to backhand. He didn't play as wide as he can to forehand, but he almost got it, which is pretty crazy. Strong forehand again. That's probably the best forehand power stroke that we've seen, and even today it's impressive. Looks pretty happy too. Stop. All right, so now we're going to move up to 2012. So now we're going to look at some women table tennis. So the thing that came now in the late 2010s was a speed game. And people started playing much closer to the table, and it was loop off the bounce pretty much all the time, backhand and forehand. And the women are really good at that. And we have the final now in the 2012 Olympic Games between two Chinese. And Li Xiaoxiao was the one who won, but they're very close. And it was phenomenal rallies, loop off the bounce against loop off the bounce, both sides. And they do some phenomenal rallies that we can look at it. The loop of the bounce is something to take home. Get forehand from the backhand corner. And that game is really, really quick. And now is when you almost never see a block anymore in the world class level. Everything is loop off the bounce. There you see a very good forehand inside. She goes like this, and the ball curves away. And that's a very good stroke when you play down the line in that situation. And there's inside and outside strokes is pretty much what all the players do today. Some really quick rallies there. Nice last point. And the Chinese women have really dominated the game ever since the 80s. There was a couple of South Koreans in the 70s that could challenge China, but they are dominating way more in the women's than in the men. And nobody could really challenge them. Japanese right now lately have been able to challenge the Chinese from the women's side, but that's the first one. All right, so now we're going to look at another match from 2014, and this is where Dmitry Overachov plays against Zhang Sheke, and what we're going to look at specifically is the only way that that modern table tennis can do something better than Chinese is probably on the backhand side. And Obrachev were able to beat Chan Shiko in this match in the team event by phenomenal backhand play. It's almost impossible to play better forehand than the Chinese, even if the Korean in 2004 actually did that. But today, the only way that we have a chance against China is actually in backhand. So Obrachev shows a couple of examples of phenomenal backhand play here. That's two very good backhand power, and it looks like tennis strokes. It's all body, straight arm, and that's how you get power in backhand the same way that we normally see on forehand. A nice ball also there down the line. A backhand inside that curves away. Same thing to the middle. And Chan Shiki here is the current Olympic champion from 2012. So there's no small feat to beat him. See another one, look off the bounce, powerful. You can also step around and play backhand from the forehand corner. If you have a good backhand, why not? Another one to the middle. They beats him 3-0 in the World Championship team final. And I think that was the first time that China lost a match in the team final since maybe 2005 or something like that. It's been a long time. Very, very difficult to even win a match against the Chinese today. And now we look at the last match, and that's more modern. That's going to be 2017, and that's the modern two strongest matchups, Ma Long and Fan Zhendong. And the interesting thing is that we always look at Ma Long when we see his forehand power. But I personally think that one of his genius kind of secrets is his very powerful slow ball. Where he does the slow ball by variation, where people are missing it, and everybody's afraid of Ma Long's forehand, and he has a very good speed backhand. But then he throws in sometimes a surprise slow one, and people misjudge that, and then he can step around and kill the ball with the forehand afterwards, or they misdirect it. And that's one of the things that he's over time been very, very, very smart. When he was younger, he didn't have that. It was all power, but he didn't win. He always got close. But when he learned to do these things, that's when he really excelled with better tactics. Let's look a couple of points here. And the other thing I want to say also that you see this ball here, when Chinese are stepping around because of the strength of people's defense in the backhand, they almost never attack the backhand anymore. They start to do a lot of stepping around and they do their forehand down the line, because people are so good at defending in backhand, and the weakness now becomes wide forehand. There was a slow ball and a fast ball. That slow ball was really what made him win the point. That's not a bad one going down the line either for a winner. Two times, and he also won in 2019. His opponent was only from Sweden, so it wasn't that tough. And that Sweden had one Chinese to beat to get to the final. So it was like a lucky draw. All right, so that's the different videos. So the conclusion of that is that you see how the sport have evolved over the years. So with this information, we need to do our best guesstimate, our best guess. How will table tennis look 10 years from now? All right, and with that in mind, we're going to develop today's player. So the way I see it is that you have to have equally strong backhand and forehand. That's going to be the trend. You have to have equally, and I'm guessing here, I don't know, I'm just guessing. We have to have equally strong defense as offense, both on backhand and forehand. We have to have equally good speed strokes as power strokes on both sides, both power backhand, power forehand, speed backhand, and speed forehand. We look at those girls who had very good speed forehands. The men actually have things to learn from the women. The women do that better than the men, in my opinion. So that could be something we can learn from the women. And there's also a very strong emphasis on serve return currently, and that will not change. It was such a strong emphasis on serve return for a while, I felt it almost seemed like a disadvantage to serve, because people had developed so strong serve returns. But then again, the normal evolution is the next step. Now we see some crazy serves. The Japanese have some phenomenal serves. There's some videos out there looking at the crazy Japanese serves. I think the name of the title is. And they have really good serves. And they make some of the world-class players not looking so good as they maybe should be. And these are the things that will happen in the future. And the variation in pace is definitely something we have to look at for the future. I call it the smart slow ball. A slow ball at the right time is equally powerful as a fast ball at the right time. And actually, a fast ball at the wrong time is very bad. If you remember the point in the 1992 Olympics, Gatien was stepping around and blasting the ball wide to Walden's forehand. He just did this, and the ball comes a rocket down the line. That was a fast ball at the wrong time against Waldner in those days. Because if you know it's fast, you don't have to do much. You set up your racket there, and the ball comes back very fast. But if you think it's fast and it comes slow, then you hesitate. You might miss, or you might make an easy ball for the next person to attack. The other thing is that we have to also train movements in balance and out of balance. So in balance is simplified an attacking movement or attacking footwork. Out of balance is basically defense footwork. So when somebody attacking to me, then I'm going to be out of balance. Okay, and that's a different type of movement than when you're in balance and when you're in dominator of the game. I cannot expect to be able to attack all the time. That's impossible. People are too good. I'm going to have about 50% I'm going to attack, and the other 50% the opponent's going to attack. And I have to learn how to deal with both situations equally good. If I'm not, then my opponent will take advantage of that with smart tactics.
Excuse me, sorry.
One. So I still have. Did I have something else? All right. So I think that was it, according to Manny.
Apparently, that was the last.
I think we are out of time. That's why he's doing that. So at the end, I'm happy to answer questions, and we can take questions about this, or we can take questions about anything if you want to, depending on what you're interested in. During COVID, we don't have 5,000 spectators here exactly, but we have maybe 5 or 6. So any questions about anything that I showed you or anything else?
How about the evolution of the footwear?
Footwear. Yes, that's an interesting analysis. I remember when I started to play, I played with a shoe called Coyobeer. That was a shoe that was like a thin, I don't know what, and it wore out in 1 week. We had to buy new shoes every week because it was so thin. And because of the mats that we're playing with, those are very hard, and those wear out shoes much more than if you play on a wooden floor, for instance. If you played in the days when we played on wooden floor, you can see a totally different scenario with shoes. Shoes are not much more quality. I would call the current table tennis shoes closer to what a tennis shoe is. It's not so much of a difference anymore. But the problem, of course, is that with table tennis, we're very quick and we stand pretty wide with our feet. So you have to have round soles on the footwear. We cannot play with tennis shoes that are pretty very sharp angles. I know that the quality of the shoes are going up more and more. Some branded table tennis shoes can go up to almost $200 today, and they're getting more elaborate, and they last much longer now too. A good table tennis shoe, actually seldom wears out on the bottom. Sometimes it wears out on the inside, and they last for quite a long time. I remember when I was sponsored back in the 80s, we got one new table tennis shoe, I mean, easily once a month. That was normal. But today, I think a table tennis shoe can last 6 months with, unless you train really, really hard. But that's all I know about that. Yes?
What's your take or your opinion of the evolution of the rubbers?
Yeah, evolution of rubber sheet have changed tremendously. I saw a rubber sheet recently here that one player had that had a bubble on them. And I was actually surprised to see that, because that's something we noticed quite a bit 30 years ago, that rubber sheet lasted for sometimes just a couple of days, and then there were bubbles in them, they were ripping because they couldn't handle the demand that the strokes did on the rubber sheet. And what happens more and more is that there is a nice balance between what I call Japanese rubber sheets and Chinese rubber sheets. If you look at Chinese rubber sheets 20 years ago, they were very, very hard sponge and very, very sticky top sheets. And you had to have a huge impact speed to activate those rubber sheets. And we talk about equipment, I always relate to a funny story that I remember I saw in 1997 at the World Championships. It was Jan-Ove Waldner and Wang Tao, left-handed with pips on the backhand. They had fun in a training hall and they exchanged rackets. And those are both, top 2, 3 in the world, and they play with each other's racket. And you think, shouldn't be that big of a difference. So Jan-Ove Waldner started play with Wang Tao's racket, and he had a forehand, and the ball literally looked like it went under the table. It was so slow, because it was totally different techniques. And then the same thing happened with Wang Tao. Wang Tao goes for his regular stroke, and the ball literally went in the barrier. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I mean, it went way off. And Waldner's racket was with a slow impact speed, much, much faster. And with the Chinese rubber sheets that Wang Tao played with at the time, you had to have very, very hard impact speed to activate the rubber sheet, because the rubber sheets were so hard. So what happens today is that it's quite common that the natural setup for the Chinese players is that they have Chinese type rubber sheets on the forehand side, because they favor power on forehand, and they need a big stroke, and that favors more for the Chinese type of rubber sheet with hard sponge and sticky top sheet. But those top sheets and sponges are not as sticky and not as hard as they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So they're getting more towards the Japanese type of rubber sheets. And it's quite common that Chinese players are playing with Japanese type rubber sheets on the backhand, because that favors the speed game. So many Chinese players are playing speed on backhand and power on forehand, and that's why they have different type of rubber sheets. But it's also very interesting when you see a world-class Chinese player get into a smash against lob situation, then they flip their rackets. Because the Chinese rubber sheet are not so good to smash with. And they learned that the hard way, because Michael Mays from Denmark in the 2005 World Championships were able to beat the Chinese player lobbing. They couldn't go through him, because it took away the weaknesses in those rubber sheets. But then, okay, Chinese, smart as they are, why not? Let's flip. Let's learn how to smash with the other side. And then the smashes will become very strong, because the Japanese type rubber sheets are better for speed game and for smash. But you can also have the benefit with a Chinese rubber sheet is that you can have a slightly closer angle on the racket and still generate a lot of pace with control compared to the Japanese rubber sheet. So that's kind of where this sport is going to. But I think in the future, I think that the rubber sheets will. And I also know that one brand has come up with what I call a in-between rubber sheet between Japanese and Chinese, that they a little bit sticky top sheet than the one, a little bit harder sponge than normal. So very soon we will find a rubber sheet that is both good for power and speed, and I think the trend will be that people play with the same backhand and forehand. because we need to have both speed on both sides and both power on one side. And you'll find that in between balance, we can favor both strokes. So that's what I believe will be the future.
Thank you.
We have an online question I would like to pose, comes from Ji Shen. So how should a young player be trained to suit the trend that you predict?
Fantastic question. That's a question I was hoping for.
There it is.
So, first of all, the trend will be, in my opinion, backhand and forehand is equally important. So you need to spend from day one equal time training and developing backhand as you do with forehand. And we see a little bit too much trends, in my opinion, that we favor forehand in the beginning and wait with backhand. But I think if you're going to have the goal of having equal strength on both sides, you have to start with both sides from the beginning. I also have to say that I think that forehand might be more difficult to learn naturally, because there are the whole body has to be involved in the execution of a forehand backhand, and it might be more power forehand. So it might be a little more difficult to learn from a young player. But most players that start to play that either a natural side, backhand or forehand. So we have to kind of look at what is the natural side, and then we have to kind of complement with the other side to match the skills. And I think also it's important that we should not focus too much on the serve attack game. We have to focus equally amount on the serve return, defend and attack game, because both are equally important. So I think that's the technical evolution. We have to reach something that I label balanced technique. You have to be able to play cross court and down the line. You have to be able to do power and speed. You have to be able to do slow and fast. So we have to start early to develop those skills. So I think if you look at what we did 30, 40 years ago compared to what we do today, we start with everything earlier. And that's the reason why we're able to find new things and better things for the future. So I believe that if you're going to have a good forehand and good backhand from the beginning, you have to start from day one. I can give an example of Ma Long. Ma Long started as a pure forehand player. He didn't have so strong backhand. And later in life, he learned backhand, but he can never really catch up to his forehand. So if you're going to have equal strong, you have to start day one, equal training. So I think that's the most important thing for the technical development, at least. Yes?
You mentioned at one point there were skills that you would take from professional players around the world to try to emulate in the training. You said Ma Long's forehand and his close to the table footwork, Zhu Jin's off the table footwork, Ultraval's backhand, things like that. Is there any other players that you would look at internationally or even locally that their skills you would try to emulate in the children coming up or the juniors?
Yes, excellent question. And you mentioned a lot of the things that I admire in the current top players. One player that I have not mentioned is Harimoto from Japan. I would say that Harimoto has, in my opinion, maybe the best speed game close to the table of the men. And he doesn't have the same power. He's also young, still young. He hasn't developed the same muscular strength as the older players. But because of his good speed game, a lot of people have now a strategy on forcing him to attack first. They do long pushes to his forehand, very heavy, and then he has to lift it up, cannot do so much power, and then they work off his pace, reverse the situation, or do more long serves to him, because forcing him to attack first, and then he's not as strong. But if you attack first to him and it's not really, really good, he can dominate you. So that, and I think in general the Japanese have developed better speed game than the Chinese, in my opinion, especially on the forehand side. The Chinese have very good speed games on the backhand, there's no question about it, but not as good on the forehand side as I would say if I compare that to the Japanese. I would also say that the weakness in the Japanese is their strength. I think they don't focus enough on strength training. And another thing that I would like to emulate is the Germans' ability to apply physical training that is table tennis specific. They're very scientific in their physical training. We take a lot of the physical training from Germany in terms of how we move and do plyometrics and strength training and so on. And table tennis is very demanding. It's very difficult to be as fast as you have to in table tennis. And the other thing that I see also the trend in physical training is injury prevention. I would say that when I hear Malong's interviews, people many times ask you, who do you consider to be your biggest enemy? And the answers many times is myself and my injuries. If he can stay injury-free, he has confidence he can be number one. But injuries is what will limit his performance if he can train hard enough or perform. And he's getting up now, being trained so hard for so many years. It's like in his early 30s, but it's still a lot. I mean, 25, 30 years of training almost. I don't know how many started exactly, but so injury prevention in the adult players is essential, and also injury rehabilitation. That new industry is extremely important for doing that. And I would say that if you look at what the United States is doing the best in the world, if I remember when I coached the national team about 20 years ago, we tried to have the best nutrition in the world. We tried to have the best injury rehabilitation in the world. We try to have the best physical training in the world. We only lack two things: players and competitions. That's it. But we were doing pretty good with the resources that we had, and I think in those areas we're still very strong in the United States. Nutrition is very strong in the United States. We have better than probably the rest of the world. Physical training, we should be the best in the world if we apply what other sports are doing. We can learn from football, from baseball, and something like that. And mental training, we do very good in sports psychology as well. And then spiritual things too. I mean, those are the things I think maybe the United States can do better than the rest of the world. And I would say that the thing that is lacking the most in the sport in the world is what the United States has. And that is excitement. So the United States is the entertainment capital of the world. And if USA is if table tennis is going to evolve to a new level, and I think that is fully aware of that. They're starting with World Table Tennis, and that's really their goal, to increase the excitement. But they have a hard time doing that if the United States is not part of it. We have Las Vegas, we have Florida, we have Disneyland. Why can't we not have the same thing in table tennis? If we can execute those things, then the excitement level of the sport in the United States and the world will follow. And we lead the world in many things in the United States, so we can create that here. That will have a benefit to the rest of the world. So, and the whole world wants it to happen in the United States. So if the people, we want to make them happy, the rest of the world.
A short commentary followed by a question. In the years, I was a player in the 70s, and I stopped playing late 70s, but I continue watching the sport. And what I see developing more is an individuality thinking of the sport, rather than we are following an organization that is creating avenues of progress, like more events, more league play, things of that nature, and that organization focusing on finding the sponsorships that are necessary to bring the sport to a bigger arena. I am encouraged with the pandemic recently that the big betting gamblers were doing around the world was the Russian Table Tennis League, which was still operating under certain restrictions. So that leads to two questions. One is, how do we here in the United States move forward to capitalize in promotion, marketing, things of that nature, to attract larger sponsors with larger purses and make tournaments exciting again? And at the same time, how do we go to the grassroots of developing the younger players and bringing them to a place like the Academy or any other of the clubs that are around, at least the Houston area that I know of, and figure out how to teach them? How could we proceed, or where do we start?
Right. Okay. So big questions, and of course extremely important questions for the United States. So I would say if you look at the trends and opportunities for recruitment of new players that have happened in the last 10 or 20 years is two communities, and that's the Indian American community and the Chinese American community. And the reason why I would say that is because table tennis in the United States happens to be an expensive sport. It takes a lot of money to develop a player. And there's more and more Chinese Americans and Indian Americans who have money. They are traditionally in high tech, and high tech is booming in the world, and there's more job opportunities there. We have the Silicon Valley thing. We have, and it's also a lot easier for the Chinese to come into the United States. So we have all this. It was very difficult with visa restrictions before. It's not so difficult right now, and they are not bound to go into traditional sports. There's not a whole lot of Chinese American and Indian Americans in the NBA. I don't see a whole lot of Indian Americans or Chinese Americans in baseball or football, for that matter. So they have no traditions to fall into. And many times, if their parents came from another country, table tennis was big there. And if they come in here and they like table tennis and they see that we have a good program for them, they are very likely to want their kids to be involved. So we have the current generation of table tennis players in the United States, the highest level, most of them are Indian American or Chinese American, born in the United States. So they're true Americans, but their parents might have been from China or from India or from some other country. And table tennis is big in the rest of the world, and we are a melting pot. We always have immigrants. And that caters over to the general American population, so to speak, because we are a melting pot of the whole world. And that's opportunities. So when we find like an ICC, the Indian Community Center in the Silicon Valley area, that's Indian based, and they were this first modern generation of a table tennis club that started, and they were basically Indian businessmen that started it. And we have an example here where we stand, the Houston International Table Tennis Community. Those are created by Chinese American, and they have very good support by the Chinese American community here in Houston. And it's very easy to recruit players from there. And that's not just players, but it's also financial support, because we need the financial support with sponsors as well. And I think the main area we have to think about, if we want to have a sponsor, we have to think what drives a sponsor. In general, if we go into the sport marketing philosophy, we have to clearly separate what is a donation and what is a sponsorship. A donation is a gift. I want nothing in return. I'm just a nice guy. Here's a couple of bucks, right? Do whatever you want with it, and I don't care, right? A sponsorship is something very, very different. That's advertising. So if I'm giving a sponsorship, I expect something in return, right? So that's advertising, and advertising simplified is we have a product. Okay, we have a table tennis tournament, we have a league, we have something. And how many people will see that? And the more people we can create to see that, the higher level of sponsorship can we get. And today we're doing streaming. That is really, really simple in today's day and age. Television becomes like really high and cumbersome. But TV also becomes less and less important in today's society. Most things are internet driven or Facebook driven or whatever different type of platforms that we have. So to creating an excitement in terms of the viewers on the internet or social media, whatever, that has sponsorship value. And it's most companies are looking way more at internet marketing and television marketing, because it's so easy we have so much apps that we don't like so much. They can track whatever we eat and what we did here and there, and then we get advertising surprisingly like 5 minutes after we talk to somebody else about a hamburger, and then we get an advertisement about a hamburger mysteriously there. So they have all these apps so that they are more inclined to sponsor those things. But the simple formula is excitement. And there's a big difference between a country like China and a country like the United States, polar opposite societies. I lived in China for 6 years, so I have a little bit of an insight there. In the United States, we have to create a fun atmosphere for athletes. And we are a winner's country. We like to win. We like to compete, right? We have to find competition opportunities that is way more important than necessary training opportunities. Because when we compete, we also learn. It's not just a waste of time. I mean, in table tennis, we put in all our effort to play good in a match. If you don't have any matches, why are we training? So it has to be excitement. And one excitement that is clearly missing in the United States is teams. So in the rest of the world, we have leagues. And you represent a club. You compete for that club. You train for that team. You train with that team. And that's what I mentioned earlier with group training, that we need to have a team structure. And the other thing is that if you look at young kids, they don't want to train with me. You know, that's no fun. I'm an old guy. I mean, I want to train with people my own age, right? Like if I'm 10-year-old, I want to hang out with 10-year-olds. I don't want to hang out with 56-year-olds. That's no fun. An old man running around, smashing behind their back and having fun, like Dino. But they're good to compete against men, but they want to have fun with their kids. They want to hang around with their peers. And it's also, if we're looking at girls specifically like to hang out in a team atmosphere way more than boys. That's my experience. So even for them, for recruiting girls, we need to have teams. And successful sports and for women in the United States, like volleyball, is always team, and soccer for women is also very successful. There's teams, large groups, and we need to recruit large group on the same age. We cannot just pick one 11-year-old here, one 13-year-old there, and train 30 hours a week. We have to have thousands at the same time, at the same age. Traditionally in the United States, sports are developed through the school system. Table tennis is excluded from the school system. We have a pretty good college league, NCTTA. We have some places we have high school, but we have nothing in the schools. And that's the traditional way of developing sports in the United States. And it's also cheaper because the school pays all the money, all the fees for the coaches and travel and everything else. So we need to find competition opportunities. And it's not just one big tournament every 6 months. It has to be regular, maybe every week. A league is very important. We have to create club-structured entities. That's the biggest challenge in the United States, that you represent a club. You don't represent yourself. And representing yourself has positives and negatives. And when I first came to the United States, I was like totally surprised. So can I enter that tournament? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Really? I can do it myself? Yeah, what are you talking about? Wow, that's amazing. Nobody understood what I was talking about. That doesn't work in other places. I have to be approved by the club. My club has to send in this one, da-da-da-da. And it's a support of a club, but it's also less freedom to an extent. So there is positive and negative to that, but we need to find more club recognition or team recognition. I think that's the solution. Long-winded answer to a long-winded question.
Very good. Very good. Any other questions from anybody?
No, I think that's it.
We want to thank Christian for the valuable time. Many good lessons, a lot of good information that I think that we're going to start implementing and putting in good use. Any other questions anybody out there that might have, you can send them to hitausa@gmail.com. We will get those questions to Christian. We'll get you direct answers. We've been graced with his visit for over a week. We probably might have it for a little bit longer here, so if we have another opportunity to do it again, so that we have more invitees and also more participation from the public, we appreciate it. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Christian.
Thank you, Manny, for setting this up.
My pleasure. Hita out.